All right, welcome to Enhancing the Accountant Bookkeeper Connection series. And this is featuring my friend, my colleague, my accountant, Kata Accounting, and new father for the second time, just over the holidays. All right, so hello, I am Tanya Hiltz. For those who don't know me, I am very passionate about collaboration, and you can find me at Tanya's Boot Camp on most of the socials, except for I am off Twitter as of last year. So there's a little bit about me. I am not going to read through all of this. Basically, I don't sleep. I don't have a personal life. And yeah, and I love continuous learning. And between us within here, because this is a safe group, some of this started because of hearing out in the public from clients and other accountants who are just a bookkeeper. And this is why I love collaborating with Jonathan. Jonathan, when he and I first started, like met and first collaborated, he was the first bookkeeper, or sorry, accountant who didn't look at me as just a bookkeeper. I now know that depending on their schooling, depending on, a lot of things, their personality, I just had the unfortunate of, those are my first several experiences. But a part of this is imposter syndrome, trying to keep up with the big boys, so to speak. So anyway, but I will gladly share that through here. But again, there's that. So, I love to start things off with a quote. I can do things you cannot. You can do things I cannot. Together, we can do great things. Mother Teresa. This is one of the few, one of the quotes that I will recycle quite frequently because I believe that it's all about collaboration. And that's what this call is, all about collaboration. So, this webinar does qualify for CPD credits through CPB Canada. It does qualify for most credits. I need to update this because CPB Canada has changed it a little bit, the way that they're doing it. But both polls must be answered in order to qualify. Otherwise, you will just receive a recording. You will not receive a recording and something that you can use to qualify for your CPD credit. The recording of the webinar and CPD credits will be emailed within 7 days. Please keep the certificate handy for future. Any requests after 14 days to resend will be subject to an administrative fee. Now, that said, there are times where something happens and it does not go out. If it's my fault and it does not go out, let me know. I will get it fixed. I obviously correct my mistakes and do not charge you for my mistakes or oversight or errors. Lynn knows that. If you're not getting the emails, check your spam first. If it's not in spam, it's possible you've unsubscribed. Here's how you resubscribe, or let me know and I can help you with that. So, Jonathan, again, he is the founder and principal of Kata Accounting Solutions. We have been collaborating with Jonathan and team for a number of years, and I want to say it is over a decade at this stage. We have multiple mutual clients. The one things that I love about Jonathan and their team, they work in QBO, they have attention to detail, and they understand bookkeeping. Because I think, Jonathan, don't you only hire people that have gone through like the management CMAs as well? That's who you focus on?
No, actually. So
Oh,
are you for the CPA role? We're open to CPAs because you got to remember the CPA path is now very different. It could be
yeah, but you still
CMA
have, is there
to
not still
GA,
the management? You can
CA.
still go down the management path?
It's a completely different way of
Is
streams
it?
now
Okay.
within CPA. So like newer people, like our CPA student Jake, he'll never have a legacy designation. And he is required to do a bit of everything through his schooling, but then he can focus and he can focus where he wants to focus. You know, if he
True.
wanted to audit, he
Well,
could. Taxes, I think the path and financial reporting is the way he's going to go.
but Jake, also maybe it's your training then that you do with him and the way that you do that you work with him. He is definitely becoming, again, more attentive over time from the bookkeeping perspective, right? More in the weeds, able to look into the weeds instead of just above the weeds. Like, we have some of that. So anyway, kudos to you for that. That's why I love collaborating with you and your team. And so the whole team, again, attention to detail, outstanding customer service, absolutely on all of that. And you guys are just all nice. So there you go.
We're
So,
really looking for jerks, like
right?
that's the one nice thing about being your own boss is you can fire the jerks,
Do you
whether they're
know?
your team members or whether they're your clients, you can get rid of them.
Well, and you know what? It's interesting you say that. And I'm just going to say this real quick, and then we're going to let you take it away. But I have a networking, a small business network meeting that I go to every Tuesday. And a couple of weeks ago, we have an educational moment, and the person that got up and did the educational moment says, "Here's what you should and should not be asked for in an interview. If you're asked what you like to do on your personal time, or why you left your next job, or what you liked." You know, best about it, or this and that, or something about your hobbies, don't answer that. That is none of their business. And when I got to speak, I said, you know what? I 100% disagree with that. I want to know who I'm hiring. That again, I said, I can train on skill. I can't train on personality. And so it is very important that their personality fits into our culture. And if somebody does not want to answer that, they are not going to be a good fit here. So, and then the other, there's a business coach in the room. He stood up and he agreed with me as well too. So I'm like, yes, we got
I
it.
think it was Tamitha who first said to me, attitude over aptitude.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. We're all capable of learning, but we're not capable of changing our stripes sometimes, right? So I know there are certain things that I can learn, and there's certain I am too stubborn. I am too old. I'm 54 years old. I am too old and stubborn to change on certain things, but there's certain things I can learn, right? So anyhow, okay, I am done with that. Jonathan, please take it away.
All right. Okay, so share my screen. If I'm looking up, I'm looking at you beautiful people. If I'm looking down, I am walking through the presentation. I didn't realize, of course, that this is could be an international audience, and this is a very Canadian-centric topic. So I apologize to anyone joining us from south of the border or anywhere else that might be joining us. Today, I'm going to talk about some basics. We're going to get a lot of questions about this. Whether you do tax or not, I guarantee you somebody thinks you know and is going to ask you. I'd be very surprised if nobody gets that question. Tanya, I did note since you last invited people in, it looks like there's a few more people who have
Is there?
joined.
Okay,
If you
perfect.
wouldn't mind having a look and seeing if any of them want to join as panelists, as you
Thank
know, I
you.
love to have these interactive
Oh,
presentations.
yeah, there's Karen. I know she'll be joining.
So I'm going to skip over most of this. Long story short, yeah, actually, Tanya, you're right. This is our 10-year anniversary collaborating together.
Wow.
I think we're about 6 months shy of our first official collaboration, maybe
Wow.
9 months shy. I think it was September of 2016. But yeah, it's a decade. Wow, that's a while. So yeah, I've been around the block a little bit. And we do work with a lot of bookkeeping firms. And we're very collaborative and we believe in co-opetition over competition. And I think that really kind of sets us apart and just the way we treat people. And I think that's really important, just treating people properly. So, all right. So a little bit of just kind of disclaimer. So as I hope everybody is doing, I'm playing a bit with AI here and there. And when I built the first iteration of this presentation, I know when I was going back and reviewing, I noticed this little button called Beautify This Slide by Gemini down at the bottom. So I started clicking that. AI does not always work well. But you can see like some of it, this would have taken me quite a while to produce this slide. So just for those who do use Gemini, negative of it is it reproduces your slide as a picture. So once you accept that slide and delete the old slide, you cannot edit the slide because it's a picture. It's not text boxes and so on. And also too, it does hallucinate. And you'll see that a little bit later on. So our agenda for today, basically, what are they and how they work? RSPs, TFSAs, FHSA, and non-registered investments, and then some important notes. I'm really glad Karen is here because I think she's going to have a lot to contribute as we go through this. What you can invest in is something that we're going to talk about a bit. Basic planning for individuals, for couples, and for business owner complications, and then some questions and discussion. Of course, we can't get into every little nook and cranny in detail because we only have less than an hour. but hopefully some of these scenarios will help. So, poll question number one.
So,
What
sorry, just for new people on here, I have to launch the poll. Don't answer right away because I have to launch it, bring it back, and then launch it again for panelists to vote. So give me a moment. So sorry, Jonathan, go ahead.
all right. So the first is what plan allows you to deduct your contribution from your income? A, an RRSP contribution. B, a TFSA contribution. C, non-registered investments. D, an FHSA contribution. Or E, numbers A and D.
All right. So some people are thinking on this before they answer. And you know what? There's one of them, and I do taxes, and I myself am not sure because that FHSA is so new. And I just sit there and I'm like, okay, before tax season, that's when I learn my stuff. The rest of the year, if it happens and it doesn't impact me until tax season, I actually start to look at it from the time that CRA is closed down. So, those first few weeks of February is when I update myself on that. So,
Starts Friday. They shut Friday.
exactly. So I know what I think from my high overview, but anyway, okay, we're gonna count down because we've got 12 voted. There's still a couple people. So five, four, three, two, one. I think we got everybody except for you and I, Jonathan, because it doesn't matter for us. So there are the results.
Nicely done. Yep. A and D is the correct answer.
That's what I thought, but I'm like, I don't remember what I saw. There, it's been a big year.
Yeah. So, unlike most of the poll questions, this one was actually a concrete answer, not a subjective answer. But yeah, we're going to go over the details. There are some similarities and differences between these programs. And hopefully by the end of this webinar, everybody will be able to speak, at least at the basic level, about all of these different ways of investing. So what is an RRSP? It's a registered retirement savings plan. This is one of the oldest things that's been around as a registered program. I'm sure everybody's heard of it before. At some point after for your RSP, you can contribute a portion of your income to your RRSP. That comes right off of your income tax. So you're deferring paying tax on that until you withdraw it from your RSP or your RRIF. Upon retirement, or when you turn 71, your RSP has to be converted to an RRIF. That has to occur in the year you turn 71 if it doesn't occur before then. Once it's an RRIF, you are required to withdraw a certain percentage of it every year, based upon, when you switched over from an RSP to an RRIF. So it is taken off your income directly. It's with pre-tax dollars that you contribute. And so you're not paying tax up front on that. The deadline this year for contributions is March 2nd, 2026, because February 28th is a Saturday. Remember that the funds that go into the RSP account need to be invested. This is very important. I've had a lot of conversations with people who are like, RSPs are a scam, TFSA is a scam. And I was like, well, what did you invest in? It's like, I invested in TFSA. It's like, well, you put the money in the TFSA. What did you invest in? No, I just put it in the TFSA. And it's like, there's just a complete lack of understanding that you're probably putting it in a low interest savings account that's not going to beat inflation, and you're not going to be happy with the results. So it really is important that when you're speaking to somebody, make sure that they're actually doing something with that money, even if it's like a cashable GIC or a GIC that's locked in. At least then they won't be losing as much against inflation, but it needs to be invested. Any growth in the investment is tax sheltered. It's not taxed. When you start drawing down your RSP, it's taxed as regular income. So all the special investment tax rules don't apply. Capital gains doesn't matter. Capital loss, carry forward, carry backward does not apply. This is the same for all the registered programs. Your dividends, you don't get a dividend tax credit. Everything, just the taxes are not paid until you withdraw from your RRSP. You can withdraw from your RSP early. It will be added to your taxable income, and usually, almost always, some income tax um, will be withheld from your withdrawal. RSP space increases 18% of your earned income up to a cap. And excuse me here, but I have my little note here, and you can all see under it. I think I put it out. Oh, no, I didn't add it there. Oh well. Okay. So next one. I believe the cap is about $38,000. Correct me if I'm wrong, anybody. All right. TFSA is a tax-free savings account. It allows you to shelter a limited amount of investment income from taxes in most situations. For instance, you cannot be a day trader within a TFSA. There has been some legal action with regards to that. You cannot, there are certain things you cannot hold within a TFSA, and there are some surprising things that you can. And we're going to have a look at that a little bit later on. So your contribution is not deducted for your income tax, which from your income on your taxes, which means that the TFSA account is funded with after-tax dollars. Um, the funds in the TFSA again needs to be invested, and any growth on that investment is never taxed, even when you make withdrawals. When you take money out of your TFSA, the amount withdrawn can be recontributed the following calendar year, as well as that year's increase in TFSA space. So for 2026, it's going up by $7,000. You just a little bit more detail for these programs. You generally speaking have to be 18 years old in order to start these accounts. And then from that point, your TFSA space will build. So I believe the total that you should have allowed now is 109,000 if you're 18 when TFSAs came into existence. But if you are not, then your amount's going to be lower. Also, you have to be a resident of Canada to contribute to your TFSA. So we've run into this situation recently where somebody went overseas to teach English in Japan and they made a contribution. Now, this was a CRA error, but they made a contribution prior to leaving to teach English in Japan. It was a substantial contribution, well within their limit, but it was substantial. They made an error on their taxes, and when they left the country, they did not report that on their taxes. So when they returned and they filed their first tax return back in Canada, the automation at CRA indicated that this person was a non-resident prior to that time, did not take into account any of the past tax returns filed, just looked at this one date of entry and never saw a date of departure. So said, this is your first year as a resident. We're going to assess you a massive penalty and interest on that penalty. And hey, your $25,000 contribution, you owe us $11,000. Of course, we got this resolved, but this is part of the improvements that's going on with CRA. And this one just went a little bit sideways. I'm curious if anybody else has seen issues with this with the TFSA in 2025, early 2026. Um, I'm sorry, Sherry, you just sent me a note. It's not going up by $7,000 this year. It didn't go up at all, remained at $7,000. I'm confused by what you're saying.
The contribution limit is the same as last year, 7,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not going up by 7,000.
Well, your total, like this, that's the amount you can add additionally in 2026 is
Yeah.
7,000. Yeah. Okay. I think we're talking about the same thing. All right. Moving on. An FHSA, this is the newest program, came about 2 years ago. It operates a little like kind of like the best of both worlds from RSP and from TFSA, but it operates a little bit differently. So it's your first home savings account, allows you to save or invest for your first home tax-free. So the income that you earn once you've contributed to your FHSA is not taxed, just like a TFSA. So kind of the best of both worlds there. The contribution that you make to your FHSA is deducted from your income. So that means it comes from pre-tax dollars. And sorry, it's a incorrect there. It is not after-tax dollars, it's pre-tax dollars. And so that means that you're not paying tax on that income as well. Now, when you take the money out of the FHSA to buy your first home, that's fine. That's what it's intended for. That money is not taxed. And if it's your principal residence and remains your principal residence throughout your ownership of that property, it will never be taxed, which is very interesting. Principal residences are not taxable. However, what works a little bit differently is when you open the account, you can contribute $8,000 per year for 5 years. However, unlike an RSP, your contribution room doesn't increase every year. It actually expires after a couple of years. So let's say you open the account in 2025 and you did not make your contribution. Your contribution deadline was December 31st. That $8,000 from 2025 carries into 2026. But if you don't contribute in 2026, you lose that first $8,000 of contribution room from 2025. It will expire at the end of 2026. So that's a key difference. Now, let's say that you end up, I don't know, meeting somebody and they own a home and you move in together and happily ever after. Well, what are you supposed to do with this FHSA? You can have the FHSA for up to 15 years, at which point it either needs to be used to buy your first home or it can be transferred to your RRSP without impacting your RRSP limit. That's a key. So you'll still have your RSP contribution room. It won't be impacted at all by this transfer. Now, this is very new. I don't expect we're going to see this for at least another 6 or 7 years, as people are just starting into the FHSA program. I have not actually received any T4 FHSA slips. Has anybody? Has anybody seen any in the last 2 years? No? Yeah, okay. So I know I'm going to see some this year because I have been working with some clients to build up some things. And we're going to have a little bit more detailed look at a scenario for an individual down the road here a bit. Anything else about this? I think I've covered it all. Any questions about the FHSA? This is the newest program. I imagine if there are questions, this will be where they are. Yes.
Jonathan,
Yeah.
so my question for this would be at like, is there a certain age that like we should be opening or that like even Rachel, she's 17. This is something that we're thinking of doing for her. Like, should we wait till she's 18? Can she start open like can she open
I
at any point or like
I don't think she can do it until she's 18.
18? Okay.
And keep in mind, like part of the tough part with all of these programs is you have to have the money to fund them, right? Like if
Yeah.
somebody's earning $35,000 a year and living paycheck to paycheck, opening an FHSA does not make any sense because they're going to create that contribution room and then lose it before they can use it. But if it's like a young professional who's earning like, I don't know, 60 or 70 a year, and they're disciplined enough not to spend it all partying, or entertainment and eating out and things like that, then they can really have a massive impact on their ability to qualify for home ownership down the road. And we're going to look into exactly that in a little bit. Good question, though. So 18, I'm 99% sure is the minimum age to open these accounts.
Okay.
All right. So what qualifies as a first home? It has to be in Canada, but it can be a variety of types. It can be a detached or semi-detached house, a townhouse, condo, apartment, a mobile home, not an RV, a mobile home. Does everyone know the difference between a mobile home and an RV? All right. I can't see all the audience. So I'm just going to say real quickly. An RV, you have an engine in it and you can drive it around. A mobile home gets shipped to its location and usually set on a cinder block foundation, quite often in a trailer park or something like that. Although you can do modular homes out of mobile homes and all kinds of different things. The home in theory can be picked up and moved in the future, but it's not as easy as turning on the engine and driving away. So RVs do not qualify, mobile homes do. Also, co-op shares qualify, and this can be for existing or new builds. It has to be your principal residence that you're buying. It cannot be a rental or for a family member. What matters is residency, not the type of ownership. So it's based on where you live. So if you own a rental that you haven't lived in for 4 years, you may still qualify. If you think this is the situation, I would strongly recommend digging in very deep on this just to make sure that you check all the boxes. There is also a rule, even if you have owned your own principal residence before, you may qualify for this program. It's the 4-year rule. If you and your spouse partner have not lived or in an owned principal residence for the past 4 years, you can qualify for this. Again, if you think this is your situation or your client's situation, I'd recommend digging deep and just making sure all the boxes are checked and everything is okay. But to give an idea, that kid I was talking about before who moved to Japan to teach English, let's just use the scenario that he did own his own home. And he left in 2020, or no, he left in 2018 and came back in 2023. And he sold the home in 2018 before he left. Well, now back in 2023, he can open an FHSA to start saving for his next first first home. It's kind of an unusual rule, but it's quite interesting, and I think it's really there to help protect people in the case of separations and divorces and situations as such. Any questions about this first home, being a first-time home buyer? Okay. So, what are non-registered investments? They are everything else. Investments you make outside of an RRSP, a TFSA, an FHSA, or a pension plan. Basic tax rules, capital gains, you include 50% of the capital gain in your income. If you have capital losses, those can be carried back up to 3 years or carried forward indefinitely to be used against past or future capital gains. If you receive dividend income, you get a tax credit that's designed to offset the tax the corporation already paid through their corporate taxes, so you don't end up in a situation of double taxation. There is a very minor benefit to dividend income if you're working with private business owners. The formulas, the way they work out, you pay a very, very minor amount less tax if you receive a dividend instead of receiving a salary. And that I mean by calculating, adding the corporate tax plus the personal tax, assuming you're at the highest income level, there's a savings there. So if you're at a lower income levels, the savings add up even a little bit more. And then there are some other tax shelters, such as partnerships, that are usually used by more savvy investors, people who are working with a financial planner. It's typically not somebody who would just be like, oh, I'm in RBC Direct Investing, I'm going to buy LP units of something. That's limited partnership units. So some examples, stocks and bonds, mutual funds, partnership units, real estate, crypto investing, and other business and ventures and investing. So that's any questions about any of this stuff before I move on to the next slide? All right, just take
I have
note. Sorry, I heard
I have
something.
one question about
Yes.
investing in the FHSA. Does it have to be out of current income, or can amounts from past savings be used to fund the FHSA?
The amount, it doesn't matter where the amount comes from, but it will come
Yeah.
off your current income. So let's say that example of the kid who went to teach English in Japan. Let's say he sold his principal residence. He threw all that money in his TFSA, and then when he came back, he opened that FHSA in 2023. He could take 8,000 out of his TFSA from his savings and put it in there, no problem.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, good question. Good question. All right. So, some important notes. Pay attention to contribution limits. Over contributions can result in penalties and interest that are larger than the actual over contribution. I've seen some very unfortunate situations with this. Registered plans, usually this happens because somebody is participating, say, in a registered pension plan, and they're investing on the side with RRSP. They don't realize how the two work and the pension adjustment works. And the next thing they know, they're in a situation where they've over contributed to their TFSA. The penalty is 1% of the over contribution per month plus interest. So that can really add up fast. Karen, you're making a face. Am I wrong? Did I get something wrong? Okay. All right. Okay. Making a face at something else.
I'm not a tax person. I'm just making a face because you have to be so careful with the CRA. Otherwise, you're going to get dinged. And I think a lot of people don't realize how badly you can get dinged.
Yeah, like we had one situation years ago. We've had three T1 OVPs that we've had to file. What that is the file that the item that you file in order to report the overcontribution, pull it out, and pay your penalties. And in one case, the person overcontributed by 20,000. In the end, their penalties and interest were over $13,000.
Mhm.
So they lost almost like what, over about 65% of their over contribution. Like that's really, really painful. We have another situation where we're working on right now where the person hasn't been the best at keeping their taxes up to date, and they're an extremely high income earner, and they're in an over contribution situation as well. We haven't figured it all out yet because right now they did about 5 years of taxes when they came to us. Now they're behind, and we're doing 3 more years this year, and we spotted that over contribution right away. Now, one thing that's important to remember is with RRSPs, the CRA is okay with up to a $2,000 over contribution. So they really don't start making a fuss until you go over that $2,000 amount. And if you can nip it in the bud, sometimes those penalties can be quite small. We had another high income earner who ended up in that situation, and his over contribution was $226. So, I mean, he really didn't care. He's like, they could take it all. I don't care. Right. But of course, we did the paperwork, we got it in there, and he got it out, and that was that. When we do personal tax, we have 3 different levels of plans, and we will assist with things like this at our highest level of plan, which that individual is on. So something that's interesting that people might not know is that registered plans were not lobbied for by individuals, by CFIB, by any kind of citizen movement. They were lobbied for by financial institutions. So almost all of these programs, the products that you buy, the things you invest in, have to be purchased through a financial institution. There is one small exception to that we'll talk about. So for instance, crypto, you cannot have direct crypto investment holdings. Similarly, you cannot have NFTs or artwork or valuable coins or stamps or, collectible cards, Magic the Gathering cards, whatever it might be within a registered plan. You're just not allowed. You are able to hold bullion if it's purchased and held by a registered financial institution. You cannot hold your own bullion that's sitting in your safe, or you cannot hold jewelry in your registered plans. You also cannot invest in real estate directly through these plans, though I do know of a situation where a person invested in mortgages through their RRSP and then use that mortgage to self-fund the purchase of a rental property. Now they do have to pay a fee annually, and the mortgage is administered by a Canadian bank, chartered bank. But it was interesting because they had the money in their RSP, so they were able to get the mortgage out of their RSP, and they have to pay interest, but they're earning the interest on it, and they just have to pay a fee to the bank throughout it. So that was a very interesting scenario. And I've talked with that woman a few times about it, and it was pretty savvy move that she made. Now you can get exposure to crypto and you can get exposure to real estate through other products such as REITs or corporations that hold real estate. There are some, what are they called? EFTs for crypto as well as crypto-based financial products. So that is a possibility. So there was an exception for something that is not held by a financial institution, and that is small business corporation shares where you are not the majority owner. So if you own less than 10% of the shares and you're not related to the majority owner, you can get those in your TFSA. This is a pretty advanced thing to do. And if this is something that you want to do, I think it's important to speak to A, the financial institution, and B, to the tax account to make sure that it's done properly to get those things in there. The shares have to be for an active business. So let's say the business grows and suddenly becomes inactive or sorry, passive in its income, then you could run into a problem and that contribution may no longer qualify and be forced out. That can also happen if you're investing in stocks. If a stock is delisted, it'll get kicked out and you'll be forced to take that money out of your registered plan. That can happen as well. It's happened to me too on some gambles. So this is very interesting. So keep in mind, this really came from the banking industry. So they want to generate sales and preserve capital by getting these registered plans, getting the money into their hands through which they can hold and earn additional money on. And they're, remember, your capital base is bigger, so their capital base is bigger. And so they really stood to profit through this. And that's where a lot of these programs came from. Like, I mean, it might seem like this is a very altruistic thing and so on, but it's a very interesting history lesson to understand that. No questions about what you can and cannot invest in your registered plans? Yes, Shannon.
Um, I someone recently told me that they were looking at trading options in their RSPs. Is that something that like it kind of confused me? Is that something they can do?
I believe so. I would have
Oh,
to
okay.
double check. I know there are
Okay.
some derivative products that are not allowed to be purchased through registered plans, but I believe if you can buy it through like a direct investing portal, then you can
Oh,
invest.
okay.
I mean,
I
the
think they
banks are
might change their mind, but I don't know enough
honestly,
about it to be good. But
options
okay,
are
that's good to
super
know.
risky.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, thank you.
Options are super risky, and because of the potential for future tax benefit, if something goes sideways, they'd actually probably be better off doing it in non-registered accounts, right? Like it'd probably be a smarter financial move.
Okay, I'll mention that to them then. Thank you.
No problem. All right, moving on. So let's talk about a plan for a basic individual. All right. I'm going to just spell it a profile. This is somebody who is a Canadian resident. They want to buy their first home eventually. They're earning a reasonable salary as an employee. They do not have any existing investments. They're not planning on leaving Canada. They're planning on staying here forever. They make a good amount of money, so they don't need short-term access to the funds. And they don't expect to have a ton of significant retirement income. So that is important because if there's a significant amount of retirement income expected, my first stop is usually TFSA because that is never taxable. Whereas if you put into an RSP, you might have a situation where your OAS gets clawed back or something like that to keep in mind. So the basic plan strategy here is FHSA first, followed by RRSP. In an emergency, the funds can be accessed, but taxes will apply. And by making these contributions, since it's coming right off their income and their taxes are being deducted at source, they're going to get tax refunds. And those tax refunds can be reinvested the following year into the FHSA first, followed by the RSP to compound results and really build things up. So out of the RSP, there's two major plans that can be used. One is the home buyer's plan. The other is the lifelong learning plan, where essentially you borrow from your own RRSP to do one of these two things, go back to school or to buy your first home. If you combine the FHSA and the RSP amounts and you assume 0% growth, but you max out those amounts, your down payment will be over $100,000. So this can be really, really powerful to somebody who is earning a decent amount of money. We worked with a gentleman years ago before the FHSA existed, and he was saving for his first home. And he had $25,000 saved up. So what we had him do was he was planning on buying the home the next year, but he was still a little bit short on his down payment. So we had him take that $25,000 and in, I think it was about October, he put it into an RRSP. So when he filed his taxes, he got a massive tax refund, turned out to be about $8,000. Now he has, at that time, the limit for your home buyer's plan was 25,000. So he had that 25,000 he could borrow from himself, plus the $8,000 refund. his down payment went up almost 50% just by that one maneuver. Now that the home buyer plan has gone up significantly and there's an FHSA, this is really compounding. This can be very, very powerful for particularly a young professional. Any questions about that before I move on? Okay. Basic planning for couples, pensions and splitting. Keep in mind, there is no income splitting, but pension splitting is still a thing. So if one party is going to have a good pension, that is the first consideration that needs to be made. All right. So they're going to have a certain amount of income coming in that could result in OAS clawback. If we look at the second one. So what we need to keep in mind is we want to bring up the other individual's income better or more. So we can use a balance of RRSP and TFSA to make that happen. Remember, TFSA income is never taxable. It's from after-tax dollars. You've already paid tax on your contribution. What you earn in there is not taxable. It will not impact your OAS clawback. However, your RRSP stuff is taxable. So that will impact your OAS clawback should that be a situation. So for 2025-6, the program runs from July 1st to June 30th. The amount is 93,454. From there, your OAS will start being clawed back. So something else to keep in mind is throughout the journey, if one person has a higher projected retirement income, they can use their RSP contributions for their spouse. So they can do the spousal contribution to help equalize that income during retirement and hopefully minimize any OAS clawback. So in this example, we did not consider FHSA because we assumed that they already own their own. I feel like I was a little bit all over the place on that slide. Does anybody have any questions about this? Okay. Your pension, your CPP is not impacted by your income. That is a pension plan you pay into. You will receive your CPP no matter what. But your old age security, your OAS, can be clawed back if your income is too high in retirement. So, AI gone wrong. Note this picture in the bottom corner. Don't know who the heck that is, or if it's even a real person, but the Gemini decided to replace my picture with this dude. No idea who he is. Good old AI, but this is what you get when you experiment, right? So some business owner complications. There could be continued income or dividends from the business post-retirement. So that's something that you have to think about. There could be corporately owned life insurance involved in the situation. You need to consider any business divestment strategy. Are they going to use a maneuver called a freeze to claim part of the lifetime capital gains exemption early, increase the amount of investment they have in their business to recognize that before any kind of exit? That is a possibility, commonly used when there's a generational transfer. Are they going to be doing an asset sale or a share sale? There's a lot more complexity and opportunity here to consider. And we also have to look at the spouse or partner's retirement income. So I think it's very, very important for business owners to save for their retirement. However, I think depending on the business, and hopefully the business is one that is a real business that is going to grow and is going to have a saleable asset towards the end of its life, its lifespan. In that situation, I will go TFSA first. Again, TFSA is from after-tax income, your contribution. So all your investment income in there is sheltered. You will never pay tax on that. So that's very, very important to keep in mind. After that, then RRSP could be considered, but it might even be logical to just not do RRSPs and stick with non-registered investments to be able to take advantage of things like capital gains and loss rules. So this is quite a bit more complicated, and it really varies depending on the business owner. Does anybody have any questions? All right, let me talk just briefly about corporately owned life insurance. So this is something Julia and I are doing. We have a corporately owned life insurance policy owned by the holding company that owns half of CATA Accounting. Once that is fully funded and all the premiums are paid up, we only pay for 10 years, and the premiums are like $23,000 a year. It ain't cheap. But once we get there, it's going to have a specified value, and we can borrow up to 80% of that value by paying a user fee to the holding company and paying interest on the loan of those borrowings. Those borrowings are secured by the whole life insurance policy that's owned by the corporation. Because it's a loan, it is not taxable income. Now, keep in mind, the holding company doesn't get to deduct the premium as an expense either. It is building an asset. It is not, an expense that's being claimed. So there's no double dipping there, no tax benefit to the corporation. Quite often, salespeople will say this is like without paying income tax. That's not true because it has to come from after tax money within the corporation. So the corporation will have at least paid the small business rate. If you have a client who's interested in this kind of a plan, it is very important that they have the correct corporate tax or corporate structure, because once you have whole life insurance in a company, you cannot spin it out. It is there, and you have to maintain that company, and you have to keep your self-compliant and all the rest of the things until until you die. So something to keep in mind. This is not something for everybody, but it is a massive opportunity to reduce the total amount of taxes that are being paid. Any questions? Moving on. All right. So again, I'm sure this is pretty familiar for me. Goals, goals, goals. What are the goals during the working years? What's the lifestyle desired? The ability to access funds, freedom of mobility. You want to be a digital nomad. We got fired for telling somebody that if they left Canada permanently, that their Canada corporation was no longer going to be a Canadian controlled private corporation, and they should emigrate their corporation as well. Otherwise, they'd be paying 26.5% income tax on every dollar of profit. And they didn't like the answer. They want to go shopping for the answer that they liked, so they fired us for that. Um, Having goals for retirement. What kind of cash flow is required to fund the lifestyle they want? Uh, are they going to have adult children that need help? And I think these days that's kind of something that needs to be factored in to all families. And then what are their travel and hobby expectations? They want to be traveling 5 months out of the year and stay in Canada just enough to have their residency, or do they want to, one trip a year, or are they homebodies and they just want to be home the whole time? The next, and of course, the important question is legacy. Do they care about leaving money for their inheritors to their estate, or do they want to fund a different kind of legacy? Um, when I was writing this, it really made me think of Juliet Aurora and Nina House, which she's been developing for quite a while now. And it's pretty awesome. They've now bought the land and they're ready to break ground on Nina House, and that's huge for her, and that's going to be her legacy. But these are things that a business owner might have a different goal set than a typical individual. Any questions or thoughts about goal setting? All right, let's get that CPD. So what can you not hold in a registered plan? Stocks of publicly traded companies, government bonds, mortgages, real estate, or private corporation shares. Again, Tanya's going to put up the poll and she's going to bring it right down. So don't vote when you first see it, but when she puts it back up the second time, you can vote. And here I went to go vote right away.
All right, there we go. We're good to vote now. All right, we're almost halfway there. We're halfway through. Okay, we'll do a 5-second countdown. Again, the answer doesn't have to be right to get your CPD. You just have to be attentive and answer. So 5, 4,
Prove you were
3,
here.
2, 1. End poll and share results.
The correct answer is real estate. You cannot directly hold real estate in a registered plan. It is possible to hold private corporation shares, but there are a lot of requirements. You have to own less than 10%. You cannot be related to the majority shareholder. And then, of course, you have to make arrangements with a financial institution to hold those shares. Stocks of publicly traded companies are common, and mortgages, you can fund mortgages through registered plans. It's just a bit more complex. And frankly, the return on investment is probably lower than your other options. All right. I thought this quote was perfect for this presentation. Someone sitting in the shade today because someone planted a tree long ago. Warren Buffett. All right. So just in summary, we went over the different registered plans and the basic rules about them. It can get quite technical. So if you do have questions, feel free to reach out, or, you can do your own additional investigation. We talked a bit about managing investments and tax and some of the key things about avoiding tax trouble with regards to registered plans and some of the benefits and drawbacks from using registered plans, such as losing the capacity to carry capital losses forward or backwards because you invested within a registered plan. We talked about investment eligibility and identified some of the things you can and can't register with. Keep in mind that any stock, I mean, it's probably never going to happen, but I mean, a stock could absolutely tumble, get delisted, and even like something that would be like AAA gold prime right now could end up getting delisted in the future and being forced out of a registered plan. It is a possibility, so it's something to keep in mind. And then we discussed a few different very basic planning considerations. I wanted to just reinforce the individual plan that we looked at. If there's a couple and they're doing this, they both have the FHS room. They both have the home buyers plan available. If they're investing properly, I would not surprise me that if they worked hard over a 5-year period and saved like mad and invested wisely, they could end up with hundreds of thousands of dollars of down payment. So that really creates an amazing opportunity for young people. The biggest challenge that I see are the large latte factor. I don't know if anybody's heard that term before. That's the problem where people have no money because they go and they buy $8 coffees every morning at Starbucks, or they drink their money away on the weekends, or they're always getting Uber Eats and paying, 35% more than they ought to for their takeout, always getting takeout and not spending wisely. So I think that kind of financial education starts early, starts young. And I think that kind of discipline can really result in remarkable wealth for those individuals who really do it. So, any questions? Yay, Lynn. Yay, questions. I'm just gonna, by all means, people, the QR code should go to our blog, and by all means, connect with us on social. I'm going to be looking up for the rest because I want to look at Lynn.
Thank you. TFSA.
Yes.
So if you pull money out of your TFSA over a period of, say, 2 years, in the third year, can you put back whatever you've taken out in those prior 2 years?
Plus whatever the contribution increase was for those 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
So I do know a woman a long time ago. She was a very savvy investor. And I think the TFSA limit at the time was like in the 40s or 50s. And she'd already grown it to over $100,000. And she took that out and did a down payment on a rental property. And she was a high income earner. And then she turned around and within 2 years, she completely caught up and recontributed those amounts to that. She was a single woman, high income earner, divorcee, probably in her mid 50s. Nice woman, very nice woman, but very smart, very, very smart. Any more questions? Did people learn something today? I'm seeing some nodding heads. That's good.
Huge, Jonathan, huge.
Thank you. Okay, good.
I'm not a tax accountant, and I must admit I tend to kind of ignore this kind of thing, but I shouldn't.
It's something to keep
I
an eye
found it
on.
very um valuable. Like it distilled things in such a great way, right?
Thank
Because
you.
sometimes this stuff's just knocking around in your head, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I think the key things are, FHSA and RSP, they result in tax refunds. If they usually result in tax refunds, not always. It does not necessarily make sense to contribute more if it's not going to increase your tax refund. Sometimes that's something to be considered. I went through this conversation literally yesterday with the old center from the from a football team of mine, who's like, "Can I just like contribute enough into my RSP to make my taxes zero?" And blah blah blah. It's like, well, yeah, but does it necessarily make sense, right? And we had a conversation about, spreading it out over time and having more impact by using RRSPs over time instead of all at once. Those kind of things. See, there's something in the chat. Let's see if that's a question. All right. No questions. All right. Well, we actually ended almost on time for once. Thanks, everybody. And baby Jude actually slept through the whole thing. He's right over here. And yeah. All right.
Thank
Awesome.
you very much. You've given us a lot of food for thought. Thank you.
Thanks, Pranay. I really appreciate that.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Yeah, my
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Yes,
All
thank
right.
you. Okay, have a
Take
good
care,
day,
everybody.
all. Bye.
Bye.